A major concern for all of us, including the new officers of the DNC, must be the erosion of support from working people, regardless of identity, for the Democratic Party. Last month, we invited the then declared candidates for chair to submit a video weighing in on what they would do to ensure that the Democratic Party becomes the party of working people again. And now we are hosting this forum focusing on the concerns of working people and the labor movement.
We spent the majority of the past 4 years trying to convince voters the economy was doing well, when in fact they'd go to the supermarket and see for their own two eyes that the prices of milk and meat and bread had doubled from just 4 years ago. So we've got to start being real and authentic with folks again and connecting with people where they are.
Yeah, I think as a party, we haven't done that as regularly as we need to be, as we need to do, and we need to look inward. So one of the things I would do operationally is work more closely with the DNC union itself. The fact that folks were getting laid off and the bargaining unit, from what I understand, being mistreated. We can't say that we're the party of working people, and yet we treat our bargaining unit and our staff union not very well. Secondly, I would work more closely with unions to build a stronger partnership, not just on election days. Too many times are we going to unions as a party and saying, help, bail us out, be that ATM, give us the volunteers, have them hit the ground. It's going to be now a partnership to where if you have an organizing.
So I think I would steal pretty shamelessly from the union movement. The union movement has a process whereby its members pay dues and then get things for those dues and feel respected by paying those dues. But they don't come back and say, oh, well, you paid your dues, but now I need another $10. I need another $5. And bombard them constantly asking for money as the #1 relationship factor that people have with their union. If that was the #1 factor that people had with their union, people wouldn't want to be in unions very much. That is how the Democratic Party is currently operating. The #1 message the Democratic Party sends through emails, through texts is give me money, give me money, give me money. No one wants to be associated with that. I want to move to a model whereby the 20 million people who are this party, because they either vote in our low turnout primaries or give us money, are treated as partners and sign up for something much more like a subscription model, like union dues, and not sort of a constant bombardment. Once you start to have a funding model that you can sustain on, then you can have an abundance mindset, and we can start funding things like, can we help out with union drives? Can we help out with organizing drives?
Let me just talk about what we've done in Minnesota that I think we can scale up nationally. One, we've built tables from our coordinated campaign table to our political and comms tables to integrate organized labor into both our electoral planning and our work to build the outside support for legislative agendas on the inside of our Capitol. Two, we worked in partnership with allies, including labor, to develop an economic agenda which focused on the struggles of everyday working class Minnesotans and their obstacles to get ahead. This framework, developed over a decade and called the Minnesota Values Project, led to one of the country's most aggressive pro-labor, pro-worker legislative packages to pass in the last decade or longer. Three, the Minnesota DFL played an important role in ensuring that all of our DFL candidates and elected officials understood, both during elections and most importantly when they are in office, the critical role that unions play in our state.
The key for me is that unions are strategic partners for the Democratic Party, not just a constituency, not a source of fundraising, not an ally. They're a core partner in the work. And that's what we've done in Wisconsin, in partnership at every phase of our fight. We stand in solidarity with striking and organizing workers in our state. We build our campaign plans and our priorities. We figure out how to navigate legislative sessions together, and we can do this nationwide. And that means regular meetings. If I'm DNC chair, with me and my senior staff, with the DNC Labor Council, with international presidents and political directors, and all the way down through the staff. That means full-time year-round staffing at the DNC to make sure that the party honors and implements this partnership, follows up, tracks commitments, and follows through. It means a strategy in every state for the 10-year plan for the elections we need to fight and win that unions help to build in partnership with our state parties and Democratic electeds, that we then draft and implement together so we can win elections and deliver the goods for working people. It means working with state parties to recruit candidates from the ranks of labor and to build relationships and accountability with Democratic candidates and staffers to the union movement. And it means critically how we communicate, showing and pitching union members and allies and Democrats who understand how to talk to regular folks to the media so that the fight for working people is at the heart of the story of this era. If we don't change how we communicate, we're going to keep losing.
We've achieved extraordinary successes during the Biden years, and yet somehow our message didn't get out the way it needed to. What are your plans to change the way the party communicates so that we engage working people and especially young workers?
You know, this begins with reorienting in a major way away from the stale DC playbook that is run by DC consultants. And I'll give you an example. I spoke with a DNC member in Arizona a couple of weeks ago, actually a teacher herself, obviously a battleground state. And she explained to me in the heat of the campaign, she was getting upwards of 16 mailers a day, daily. But the simple matter of fact is with every one of those mailers or TV ads that's cut, there's a 15 to 20% cut that's going to some friend of a congressman who has a vendor's contract that's ripping us off at the DNC. We've got to send that money to folks in the trenches like yourself who can organize and organize year round and person to person, peer to peer, begin to rebuild that once grand coalition that we haven't seen in 16 years.
You know, I think for years and years, we have heard from locals, we have heard from working people about these issues. Not only that is the message not penetrating through, but we're saying the wrong thing, but even more importantly, that we're not showing up and we're not walking the walk. So I think, yes, business as usual, business to business. We don't need focus groups. We don't need consultants, and we don't need anything that's risk averse. I think we just need to have a better partnership with labor leaders here, with allies, to make sure that they have a voice at the table and they're in leadership roles, so we can go straight to the source and we can talk directly to members about what concerns they have, what they are worried about, and what they want us to fight for.
Democrats need to listen deeply to working people and speak clearly in ways that actually reach working people who have other things to do than watch MSNBC. And to do that, we need a permanent campaign. The Wisconsin model is to communicate and organize everywhere all the time. That's neighbor to neighbor and friend to friend in every zip code, in cities and suburbs, in rural areas and small towns. And it means communicating year round on every platform. And that means on local TV and in newspapers, and it means TikTok and YouTube and streaming and podcasts, in-game chats and group chats. It means amplifiers and influencer networks. It means tons of communicators. It means a chair, but also tons of other folks who are trained and networked with each other and can credibly and authentically talk to working people in their own communities. And what they talk about matters.
We also need to deal with the issue that right now, all of the money, not only is all of the money practically kept with the consultancy class and a mere pittance given to all these states, this has to change on a radical level, a fundamental level. But it's not only that. We have to have the money for them to be able to hire all these people who are going out into these communities. So the next chair of the DNC is going to have to deal with that fundamental level. It can't be incremental change. It's wonderful that we're going to go out and talk to people, but we need to know that we will have a chair of the DNC who will face the fundamental problem. Also, the way it is now, all of the concentration of the DNC practically is on the presidential. We need to be there on local issues, especially with teachers, with parents, with children, local and state, all the time, and we need the money to do it.
Thank you.
Let me just say, we need to actually have union members out there talking to workers instead of celebrities. Who better to talk about education than a teacher, right? Who better to talk about hard work, getting up each and every day and having to go out and build affordable housing than a carpenter, right? I mean, the reality is we've got great messengers, we just don't use them. We keep relying on the same failed tactics. We are a big tent party. We are very diverse as it relates to race and ethnicity to geography to ideology. The one thing we know that connects all of the disparate groups within our party is economics. Everyone has a job. Everyone's working their asses off. Many of them feeling like they can't get ahead and achieve the American dream. They're falling behind and they feel like our party has forgotten them. This isn't rocket science, folks. We need to organize everywhere, use every communications channel we can, and give people who are working their tails off a sense that we care about them, their lives, their dreams, their hopes and aspirations. If we do that again, we'll win.
Nate Snyder,
Absolutely.
Martin O'Malley,
Yes.
Ken Martin.
Without a doubt.
So our question tonight is, what would you do as chair to ensure that the Democratic National DNC treats labor as a true partner instead of just a funder or a source of money?
Thank you so much. Look, a lot of people in DC want to win the argument. I actually want to win elections. And with families facing the impacts of the Trump agenda, we have a brief window to show that Democrats remain the party of the people. Winning isn't optional, it's imperative, and I know how to win. The one thing that should matter to Democrats right now is winning again. In Minnesota, we've demonstrated that labor isn't just a source of funding. It's a full-time thought partner in shaping our agenda. Through the DFL's coordinated campaign, labor leaders are integral to developing, implementing, and executing our electoral strategies. They're not just donors, they're decision makers in our state. The reality is, I want to bring this same model to the national party. We're going to scale it up with our national coordinated campaign table, which I just rolled out today, and make sure that unions aren't just giving money to the DNC. They are sitting at the table and helping to drive all of our strategies so we get workers back to the table, back to voting for Democrats again, and centering on a working class.
We will be out there when there is a strike somewhere. I don't care if it's mental health workers, medical workers, ski patrollers, wherever it is. We're going to be there. We're going to have people on the ground. We're going to have people who care to help the Democratic Party again, because they will know that we are having their back. We are with them, and we're going to get this thing done.
So what I would do is find a way to look at seeing which Democrats are willing to forego getting their COPE PAC checks so that that money can be thrown back into direct union member to member communication. Because there are a lot of money that unions spend on Democrats for Democrats is then used for those TV ads, for things we want to do, and is not used to have workers talk to workers. I'd like to find a way that you can say, look, we love you just as much, whether you write that COPE check or you don't write that COPE check. And another thing that I would want to think seriously about is that the organizers that I would have would absolutely be willing to engage labor and help them with the things they need, because there's another pair of hands around whose full-time job it is to make democracy work better, to make the party work better, and to make labor work better. And so if there's another person who, can just, even if you want to do an event, can go and grab bottled water for it, something very granular like that. I think if we have those kinds of people who can help, and then we say, take the money that you were spending on the programs that we want to do and go back to spending it on members, that's a partnership. That's better than what we currently have.
So getting this right means listening to unions and working people as a moral North Star for this party and for this country. And that means building structures within the Democratic Party to ensure that unions are more than just a funder. That starts with being on the hiring committee for the DNC's executive director and figuring out who should fill top staffing positions together. That means regular meetings at every level of our organizations and building our strategic plans together. It means not just a 50-state or 57-state party strategy. It means 57 strategies in each state and state party that unions help to craft and to implement, where we understand each of our capacities and the work that we can do together to fulfill our shared plans over a 10-year horizon. Because this fight is not one and done. This is not about getting right what we got wrong last time. This is about building a country together that works for working people. And it means day-to-day solidarity in fights that come up unexpectedly or that are the fruit of years of planning, like the Social Security Fairness Act that just got signed into law, and congratulations on that. It means means a labor education program developed with unions to train Democratic Party staff and campaign staffers and candidates so that they know how to live up to our party's values and partner with the labor movement in their work, both when they run for office and when they are in office. It means working with union vendors.
I cannot emphasize enough that it is going to be necessary for us as a party to bring the labor movement, those that are involved in this labor activity, to the table. What that could potentially look like is setting quotas for not only labor leadership, but as well as the youth to sit on the various subcommittees and councils and caucuses so that their ideas, their attitudes, their beliefs become ingrained in the party platform.
So is going to require the essential voice of labor, the experience of labor. So we need to recruit more candidates from labor to run for office, not down the ballot, but all across the ballot. We need labor's feedback in terms of message and tactics and what works and what doesn't work so that we can improve upon that every 2 weeks, not once a year. It's not about having meetings for meeting's sake. And it's about looking at the data, looking at the evidence of what works so that we can do more of it.
Look, it's not just funding. I'm sick and tired of our National Democratic Party more broadly taking for granted our friends in organized labor. A few weeks before the election, frantically calling folks if we need some door knockers, frantically calling folks if we need some warm bodies behind a podium at a rally. Again, I want the next DNC, the iteration of our National Democratic Party, ought to be having our friends in organized labor in the room making decisions with us. What does that look like if I'm chair? I don't just want labor on the hiring committee of the executive director. I want the next executive director to come from organized labor. I want new partnerships between the DNC and organized labor, whereby off cycle, we are using DNC dollars, whether it's direct or through super PACs, to organize workplaces off cycle so that on cycle, we have larger membership roles to pull from and help our candidates electorally. I want the labor coalition staff, director to be exclusively full-time and focused on coalition building for labor with, in conjunction, the Labor Council. Right now, they're split between multiple roles. And I want, and I think Ken Martin mentioned this, I want organized labor, our leaders in the working class, to be the most common face on TV, the most common validator talking to the public. I want the next DNC, the next National Democratic Party, to be organized labor, and the public needs to see that.
Thank you all. Shane.
Hello, tonight from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I'm Shane Forbes, president of the Retail Wholesale Department Store Union, UFCW Local 110. And I work on the factory floor at Quaker Oats. We also represent workers at General Mills across town and Kohl's Quality Foods in North Liberty. We are America's heartland of workers. Sadly, many of our members voted for Trump. I've talked with many of my coworkers until I'm blue in the face about what this administration did for us, but I can't do it alone. The message isn't being reached by workers in the factory in Iowa, and we need your help. Speaking with us about tangible things that impact us regularly that could change that. Our question for you tonight is, what would you do to ensure that labor disputes such as strikes, contract negotiations, receive support from the party and Democratic leaders?
So I believe the Democratic Party, as the party of labor, the party of working people, needs to stand up and get involved when workers are being worked over by people who think profit's a lot more important than people. That's the person I have always been. And I believe that the Democratic Party can't remain silent, can't act like well, we might offend a CEO here or there if we stand up for people everywhere. We need to stand up for people everywhere. As I said before, our economy is not money, it's people. And as a party, we need to act like it. We need to speak up on behalf of workers. And we also need to be out there when workers have to take action in order to get a fair shake from their employers. We need, on the other side of these dark 2 years, as we fight against Donald Trump, we need a new Bill of Rights for American workers in the 21st century.
Ben Wickler.
Shane, thank you. The essential question is, whose side are you on? And the Democratic Party should be crystal clear that we're on the side of working people. Strike is not a dirty word. It's an exercise of power. And the bosses who don't negotiate in good faith and bring the strikes upon themselves, they are exercising power themselves. So that means as a Democratic Party, we need to walk the picket line and organize candidates and staff to be able to do so. That means that we need to be able to pick up the phone if we have a relationship to make sure that that folks are hearing that the Democratic Party will not back down in solidarity with the folks that are putting their own lives and livelihoods on the line to ensure that working people get a fair shake. As a Democratic Party, the way that we will earn trust from people is by solidarity. It is by actually showing up when the chips are down. I think people remember who's with them when they're in a fight. And the Democratic Party needs to be ready to fight in ways that people can see and feel and hear. If we want to build the muscle memory of solidarity, we need to practice every single day. And that's my commitment if I'm the DNC chair.
Marianne Williamson.
When I was younger, the Democratic Party seemed to have far more spine. We were the unequivocal advocates for the working people of the United States. Sometimes it seems to me that the elite of the Democratic Party have failed to understand how much suffering there is out there. 1 in 4 Americans live with medical debt. We have over 1 million people who are rationing their insulin. 70% of Americans say they live with constant economic anxiety. We have people in this country who are selling their blood plasma. We have 70 to 90 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. This is what corporate tyranny has done to us. There is no pushing back against that without labor. The relationship between the Democratic Party and organized labor must be airtight. There was a time when I was growing up when it was. Today, the Democratic Party is a little too equivocal sometimes. We come across like, yeah, we want to help people, and we want to stand for the things that unions want. However, we don't want to go so far that we might offend the donor class. Those days must be over.
I agree with most of what's being said, but I keep on hearing buzzwords here. And that's not getting to the root of the problem. I think I uniquely have been in position, not only contract negotiations, but I would add in organizing drives. Too many times as an organizer, I would go to my local assembly or I go to my local legislator and I'd say, sir or ma'am, we need your help. We need you to help protect the workers as they form their union. We need your help to leverage to make sure that they win their contract and they get the wages and benefits that they deserve for their hard work and the respect on the job. And so many times I was told, hey kid, come back, let us know how it goes, and then maybe we'll show up. Well, as DNC chair, I'll work with labor. I'll make sure there's accountability. I don't think that's been really said here. There needs to be a new level of accountability, not only with the DNC, but also Democrats abroad, that if you say you're with working families, you show up for working families. And there should also be incentives, whether it comes down to funding, whether it comes down to staff, and various other things. I was really glad to hear that we're all on the same page in regards to not receiving money from union busters or corporates who have nefarious ideas. And I think we need to stick to that, but we also need to live by it. So I think that's a big thing, accountability here and making sure that we show up when it's needed.
Let me just say that part of the challenge again is people are frustrated and mad because they keep hearing the same thing over and over again from both political parties. And yeah, it's great. We do need to be in solidarity, as Ben said. We do need to stand up at the picket lines and show up for labor because they show up for us, but we need to show up for workers as well. And what I mean by that is people are sick and tired of getting people elected to office and see those people see the first decision that they make on any one of these issues is through their own self-interested lens of getting reelected. You see, in Minnesota, what we did with the 1-seat majority in the last trifecta is said, we're going to use the power we have when we have it to make the biggest difference for as many people as we can. And what we did is we focused on agenda of the struggles of everyday working Minnesotans. And that's what we passed. And so half the battle is showing up for sure, but the other half of the battle is doing something when you have the power to do it. And that's what we need to do. And I agree with Nate. We need to hold people accountable. We need to hold Democrats accountable just as much as we hold Republicans accountable. You can't say you're pro-labor and when you get into office, do nothing to actually focus on an agenda that's going to lift up workers' voices. When I'm DNC chair, and that's when I'm DNC chair, you can take it to the bank. We're going to deliver for working people, and we're going to hold Democrats and Republicans equally accountable to delivering for them as well.
James Skoufis.
Thank you. And thank you for the question, Shane. If there's one issue I'm known for in New York State government, it's taking on corporate welfare. And to the point that's been made a couple of times, you can't have it both ways. You can't be on both sides. You can't be for working people and be for corporate elites. And so we have to signal, not just during those times when there's a picket, when there's a contract dispute. And yes, certainly as DNC chair, I would look to, as I've done as an elected official, bring the full bear of pressure and shame to bad acting corporate interests when there are labor disputes, when there are contract disputes, yes. But if it was as simple as showing up on a picket line, I think the election result would have been very different 8 weeks ago when we had the first president in history show up on a picket line for UAW. So it's not that simple. We have to, as a party, not just show up at those sort of episodic moments. We have to show up year round. Shane, we've got to go to your factory floor as both elected officials and party officials and lean into hard conversations, because that trust has frayed, not just over the past year, the past election cycle. It's been fraying for years and years and years. And we've got to go to those factory floors, just as I, every couple of years, have a big town hall with the carpenters union, a couple hundred carpenters. Yeah, they asked me some questions about wage theft and corporate welfare. They also asked me about guns and abortion and the transgender conversation. And we can't be running away from these tough conversations any longer. We've got to be meaningfully engaging workers where they are. That's what we'll do as the next Democratic Party.
Dr. Quintessa Hathaway.
There's a portion of the conversation that I believe is being missed. When it comes to contract awards, that is a way for the economic opportunity and wealth gap to be able to shrink. There are sectors of this country, primarily in the private sector, where there are not enough contracts being awarded, state or federal, to minorities, women, and people of color throughout this country. That is how many, during the industrial period, have been able to pull themselves literally up by their bootstraps to be able to equalize their opportunities. So we're not doing enough of that. Also, I took some notes. Y'all know I'm a teacher. We have to use our think tanks to craft legislation that will be introduced by Democrats that directly impact the labor council as well as its leadership.
Jason Paul.
So I guess I think about this differently, because I absolutely want to get party and Democratic leaders to support unions during contract disputes and strikes and those issues. But what would really make a difference is if we could get Democrats, the 20 million Democrats who vote in low turnout primaries or give Democratic candidates, to do the same. Because if the customers of those companies are unhappy because of the way they're treating their workers,